Welcome to our virtual training on small group time based on the high scope approach. My name is Jackie Gross and I'm one of the lead teachers, and I'd like to introduce my colleagues.
Hi, good morning. I'm Gemma Fitzgerald. I'm also one of the lead teachers.
Hi, I'm Eileen Milan. I am the PERT psychologist.
We are ready to get started. Okay. So we are going to begin our training with a message board, our meaningful message. So for message number one, we're simply going to have a new experience today. We are recording our webinar for the first time, and we are very excited about that. And for message number two, we're going to be talking about small group time and the components of small group time throughout the time we're sharing with you.
Our quote for today is, "Better learning will not come from finding better ways for the teacher to instruct, but from giving the learner better opportunities to construct." And that's from Seymour Papert.
Okay, so the objectives for today. Participants will be able to state the rationale for a supportive climate during small group time. You'll be able to describe each component of small group time. Work on developing opening statements to help focus children's interest and attention on the small group time activity. We'll also talk about planning for small group time activities with active learning in mind.
So let's talk about small group time defined. Small group times are adult-initiated activities during which children explore materials in their own way, with the adult sharing in the excitement of their discoveries. Teachers plan for learning experiences and materials based on content, children's interests, and their levels of development. So let's begin with climates. Now, this would be a climate that I'm sure many of you would like to be in right now. Unfortunately, that's not the climate we're going to be talking about today.
So let's talk about climate number one. This climate, the teacher instructs and talks, and children listen and follow directions. The teachers control the activities, and children are expected to create a product that looks like the teacher's product. This is a directive climate where adults are primarily in control. So take a moment to pause and think about how this climate might affect children. Write down some of your ideas to share at our Q&A session that will follow later on.
Classroom climate number two. Teachers let children play by themselves and they don't get involved. Teachers act as safety monitors, providing supervision if a problem arises. And during small group time, teachers do other work or passively observe what children are doing. This is our laissez-faire climate where teachers are very much hands-off. Pause again to think about how this climate might affect children in the classroom. And please, again, write down the ideas that you have so that you can bring them to our Q&A session as well.
Classroom climate number three. Teachers and children are partners in play and learning. Teachers value children's active learning. They're consciously building in opportunities to share control. And teachers make adult-sized decisions while children make child-sized choices. In this climate, children feel that they are competent and it boosts their self-confidence levels. Teachers accept all levels of learning and give and take in the classroom. Shared control.
So let's think about the three different climates. at small group time. So during our laissez-faire climate for small group time, teachers give them the materials, and then they sit back and they watch, and they pretty much wait until it's over. In our directive climate during small group time, the curriculum content is very much directed by and from the teachers. Children drill, children practice, they do exactly what the teacher wants. In our supportive climate, teachers scaffold each child's learning and make the activity worthwhile and appropriate for all. So if you look at the three climates side by side, you may reflect on your own practices to see where you are now. Think about some ways that you can adjust your classroom climate in order to maintain a supportive climate with shared control. Remember, shared control is still guided by adults. Adult-sized choices, child-sized choices. If you find that you are on either side of the continuum, you may find that there are some power struggles in both of those situations. When we share control, the need for power is minimized, and all members of the classroom are working together.
During a HighScope small group time, supportive teachers scaffold each child's learning and make the activity worthwhile and appropriate for all. This is the climate where adults can offer the most support for children. This is also the climate where children can grow at their own pace while making and taking safe risks and extending their thinking. This is also the climate where children can express ideas, build relationships, and make mistakes. They can try new things and still feel safe. This is an environment where children can be eager to show current interests and develop new interests as well.
Okay, let's share for a moment. What are the benefits for both adults and children when we create a supportive climate for small group times? Supportive environments send children a variety of positive messages about their learning. It tells them that this is a good place to be and that you belong here. You can trust this place. You can do many things on your own here. This is a safe place to explore and try out your ideas. When teachers build positive relationships with students, the classroom becomes a safe, learning, friendly environment where students feel more confident taking risks and pushing their students while thinking. And what they would also like when teachers give them a chance to individualize their instruction. And it helps them build meaningful teaching experiences for them. Teachers can then use that knowledge about these children to find ways how they can help students understand the materials that they present.
So in all of the experiences that we have, including small group time, the key component would be the 5 ingredients of active learning. So we're going to spend just a couple of moments talking about those 5 ingredients and its relationship to small group time. So our first ingredient would be materials. In your classrooms, you would have, and in small group time, you would have a variety of developmentally appropriate materials, plentiful materials for children to work with individually, as well as sharing with others. For manipulation, children can use the materials in ways that are meaningful to them. And occasionally the manipulation would be moving their bodies, such as an experience of during large group time, or their voices when they're singing as well. Choice means that children can make a variety of child-sized choices throughout the day while using materials and thinking and sharing their ideas. And this is throughout the entire daily routine. And again, We'll reiterate, choice is about child-sized choices within a safe environment created by the adults. Child language and thought. This is an opportunity for children to share with each other, to share with the adults in the room, the teachers in the room. And there are also the children who are not necessarily talking as much, but that does not mean that they're not thinking about what they're doing or using some nonverbal ways to share their ideas and their thoughts as well. Adult scaffolding is our opportunity as teachers to meet children where they are and then move them to the next level safely in a way that we know that we can stretch their thinking without frustrating them at the same time.
So what does active learning look like during small group times? Materials. Children have their own set of materials, and there might be some shared materials available too for the teacher putting out in the middle part. Manipulation and choice. Children experiment with the materials, using them in ways that make sense to them, which may or may not be what the teacher originally had in mind. Child language and thought. Children can share verbally and non-verbally their ideas and their discoveries, and all will be accepted. Adult scaffolding. Teachers support and extend learning for each child at their own developmental level.
So we're going to take a look at a short video that gives a bit of a summary and an introduction to small group times.
Small group time is a segment of the daily routine in which a group of 5 to 10 children meet with an adult at a consistent time and place to work with materials selected by the adult. During small group time, children experiment.
Look, Elliot,
Explore. Create. Solve problems. Or build with the materials in their own individual ways. Adults plan small group time based on their observations of the interests and developing abilities of children in the classroom. Ideas come from many sources. A small group time plan often focuses on a particular content area, such as some aspect of literacy.
That's for Henry, for H for Henry.
Or number abilities.
I want 11 teams.
Small group times may also tie into pretend play themes that are popular with children, such as birthdays, pets, or fantasy characters, or around art or building materials that children enjoy using.
You know what I am going to do? I'm going to put these in the toy area this afternoon at the next work time.
Small group time is also a good time to introduce new materials that would be available in the classroom or to bring in materials tied to a community activity or seasonal theme. At the start of the activity, adults usually have an individual set of materials ready for each child. The adult introduces the activity by making a brief statement. As children work, the adult child to child, so all children receive attention. The adult observes, listens to, and imitates the way children play and use language, and looks for ways to support children in pursuing their ideas.
You're finished. Last few letters.
Warning is given as the activity draws to an end, and the adult and the children put the materials away.
Okay, the next several slides will be highlighting things that children may experience during these small group activities. During small group time, children can solve problems and make choices. This is where children can learn to take risks. They're trying new things. They develop skills needed for problem solving in all situations, and that will help benefit them later in life. As children are supported in taking initiative and solving problems with materials. It also helps with supporting self-regulation skills. When children are struggling with materials or not, or are using them in ways that adults don't envision, take it as an opportunity to support that child's learning rather than have it become a crisis where an adult needs to intervene. You don't need to make sure that the child gets it quote unquote right.
During small group times, children are exposed to new materials and experiences. Children have the opportunity to use materials that they might not necessarily choose to use during work time. Try to think about ways to incorporate these materials into small group activities. Think about the child who always chooses the same interest area every day. They may be apprehensive about trying new things because they are uncomfortable in that interest area. When teachers create new experiences for children during small group time, that child may become more comfortable with using those materials at work time. It's about creating familiar experiences with them, making them become more comfortable with the materials.
During small group times, children have consistent peer interaction. Consistency in peer interaction helps to develop and strengthen relationships between children. They may be in small groups with children that they do not always choose to play with at work time. It also offers an opportunity for teamwork and collaboration. This offers a time where there can be turn taking and sharing with the shared materials. The turn taking may be in a situation where children also have to wait for the attention of their teachers. This allows for adults to model the words and behaviors needed for being patient, asking for a turn, asking to share materials, saying please and thank you, everyday social skills that we are teaching in natural situations. Children learn to say things like, "Can you please pass me the yellow scissors?" And adults might say things like, "Thank you for waiting for me so patiently while I was helping out Sarah." When modeling positive peer interactions, you may see children use what you have modeled during future small group times. It is important to acknowledge when children are using these skills.
During small group times, adults build on children's strength. This is where we meet children where they're likely where they are and help them to safely develop new skills. Let's think about the high scope horizontal versus vertical approach. In the vertical approach, we push them to go up the ladder because that is where we are often told that they should be at a certain age. When we use a horizontal approach, we support them at the level they are at now and help them to safely move along the continuum as they move forward with their learning. When children are forced up the ladder, they are more likely to fall harder. When children are guided along the horizontal ladder, it is a safe space for learning and for making mistakes. So, looking at the ladder that goes vertically, when you push that child up, 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 because we think that's where he should be or where that's where the books tell us they should be, that fall is going to be a long drop if they don't make it. Where if we use the horizontal ladder and guide them along horizontally, we're supporting them to move them forward instead of having them fall.
During small group times, adults observe and interact daily with the same children. This is an opportunity for teachers to really get to know their children, build relationships, gain insight into activities that can be planned for future small group activities as well. When you interact with the same children daily, you literally have an opportunity to plan activities around children's interests as well as their developmental levels. Take advantage of this time. This is a great time to collect anecdotes for CORE while interacting with children. During your interactions, jot down a couple of key words to help you remember so then you can create the anecdote a little bit later on. Don't let the anecdote writing distract you from interacting and from staying in the moment.
Practice support strategies in a stable setting. This is an opportunity to work on creating a comfortable environment for children and adults. Children feel comfortable taking risks, sharing with adults and peers, and taking initiative. The more you use the adult-child interaction strategies, the more comfortable and natural you will feel.
During small group times, adults introduce new materials and experiences. Again, as we said earlier, that when children are exposed to new experiences and materials, this is the same for adults. Take some time to reflect on the materials and experiences that need to be introduced or reintroduced. When you hold small group times in different locations of your room, after meeting, of course, in your original small group location first, you expose children to interest areas that they might not otherwise visit. This is also an opportunity to learn about your children and their families and cultures by inviting family members in to share cultural experiences. It helps to foster a sense of inclusivity, and it makes children and their families feel valued.
So let's think about creating our small groups. Groups meet at the same place and time each day. You can balance your groups and then make adjustments as needed. And you're going to maintain these groups for about 2 to 3 months. You're also going to post a list of your group members' names using the letter links. So let's talk a little bit about balancing groups. You want to keep in mind the temperament of the children in your classroom. For example, if you have 2 children with challenging behaviors, perhaps they're even receiving support strategies, you may want to keep them in 2 separate groups in order for the adults to appropriately scaffold and support them during small group time. It is also important to balance groups in order to support their developmental abilities. When children are in mixed groups cognitively, children can learn from each other, which is peer-to-peer scaffolding.
So here are 2 examples of how you can post the groups. Of course, always include yourself and your para in the grouping.
Okay.
Um,
Now,
excuse me.
something
Yes.
I did, sorry.
In some classrooms, the signs are separate and posted near the table where the children regularly meet for small group time. Some teachers like to name their groups by color or by animal names. Posting the groups using letter links also helps with pre-reading skills as children recognize not just their own names, but the names of the peers and adults.
So now let's talk about the components of small group time. We have the beginning, where we introduce the activity with an opening statement. We have the middle, where children and adults interact with materials and with each other, and adults find opportunities to scaffold children's learning. And at the end, we bring the activity to a close, and then we transition to the next part of the daily routine. Here are a couple of tips for a successful small group time. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Review your lesson plan first. Know what you're going to be doing and experiencing with your kids. Gather a set of materials for each child and for yourself and sort them into individual containers. For example, you might prepare ahead of time scissors, glue sticks, and paper scraps in each basket for an art-focused small group time.
So more tips for successful small group time. Again, prepare, prepare, prepare. Also have backup materials ready. Backup materials are extra materials that you place in the center of the table for anyone in the group to use as needed. For example, more paper scraps, yarn, and feathers for that art-focused small group time. Place materials within easy access of your small group meeting place. Use small baskets, yogurt containers, trays, lunch bags, shoe boxes, etc., to hold a set of materials for each child and for yourself. There's no set way to display your materials or to share your materials, so you use whatever you're comfortable with or have on hand.
Preparing ahead of time has its benefits. Cuts down on wait time, makes materials easy to distribute to the children, and it ensures that each child would have what he or she needs. Lack of preparation can create chaos. When you are not prepared ahead of time, children who have attention issues, exhibit challenging behaviors can take over, and you have a frustrating experience before small group time even begins. You may even end up spending more time managing behaviors than doing the actual small group activity. I would also be mindful of thinking about those chaotic moments and ask yourself, are you prepared before you think about referring any child who has challenging behavior?
Planning for small group times, sources of ideas. We have content areas, children's interests, new and unexplored materials, and local traditions. These are 4 sources that we recommend that you use when planning your small group time activities. In the daily lesson planning sheet, there's a space for checking off which strategy or strategies you used in planning the activity. The reasoning behind this is so that visitors are able to see why you chose a particular small group activity. It shows intentionality in your teaching. Just be mindful of this because it is something that is looked for when administrators visit your classroom. Tap into these resources when planning activities. Content area. Always think content. The content areas would include the New Jersey Preschool Teaching and Learning Standards, and they could be emerging content. When writing lesson plans, you're using the New Jersey Preschool Standards as your objectives. Those are your SMATs. Your BYs are the descriptions of the activity.
So let's take a look at some examples of how content areas are used for when we are planning our small group times. So here's a little anecdote from Ms. B's classroom. At work time, Ms. B noticed how Shania arranged her Legos. It looked like she had several patterns: blue, white, red, white, white, yellow, white, yellow. This made Ms. B want to support Shania's interest in creating patterns. It also made her curious about what other children might do with the patterns. So she may have collected this information during a prior small group time or perhaps during work time. And gathering this information from this anecdote helps Miss B to then create activities to meet Shania where she is. So for small group time, this is the activity that Miss B has chosen so it's open-ended and she can meet the developmental needs of all her children. She's going to tell a little story about frogs hopping on pads, and the pads had patterns: red, blue, red, blue, etc. Then she's going to give children several baskets with several frogs and small paper squares, perhaps red, blue, and yellow. And she's going to encourage them to make their own pattern pads for their frogs to hop down. So she's supporting Shania's interests while also seeing where the other children are with the skill of patterning, and also taking more anecdotes based on what occurs during this activity.
Remember, even though this small group time was planned around patterning, it's important to accept the individual ways that children respond to the materials. Some children might sort the paper squares. Some children might make designs with them. And some children might make stories about their frogs. And this is okay. This can speak to all parts of the daily routine as well. Think about active learning and how children are encouraged to make choices about how they approach and or use the materials. Adults can learn a lot about a child's interests and abilities based on how they approach small group time experiences, especially when children do not use materials in the way adults expect them to. This is where observations are key. Children's interests. So you want to think about what children like to do, the materials they like to use, and how they interact and play with each other. Small group time around children's interests can be a child's motivation for initially getting engaged with the materials. Interests should always be layered on the content area you wish to focus on. Adults can learn about children's interests through observations and interactions throughout the entire daily routine. This takes time and trust, as any relationship does.
So now we're going to talk about how we can combine children's interests and the content areas. So here's another anecdote from Miss B. She noticed Shania's patterning as previously described. But then she also noticed that Ben was playing with the cars, a favorite activity of his. Today, he races them down the tracks. But Ben usually has a difficult time engaging during small group time. So Miss B has an idea about how to layer on Shania's interest with Ben's interest in cars. So Shania's interest in patterning, with Ben's interest in cars. So it's an example of layering children's interests with content areas. She plans to consider other materials in order to teach the same skill, and she will think about how to engage Ben, who does not always like to join small group time, by supporting his interests. So here's what she's going to do for her small group time. She's going to tell a little story about cars parking in the garage in patterns: red, blue, etc. She's going to give children a carpet square for their garages and baskets of cars with 3 different colors: red, blue, and yellow. And then she's going to encourage the children to make their own patterns in their garages. So she adapted her lesson to include Ben's interest in cars while still teaching the skills he needs for creating patterns. In some cases, you might have a child, though, who requires accommodations and perhaps has a real favorite toy, like dinosaurs. So this strategy can be written to allow for this child to use dinosaurs during this activity, while others do have cars in their baskets. The goal is to get children to participate and still have the opportunity to learn how to create patterns or to learn new skills.
Remember, even though this small group activity was planned around patterning and using cars, some children may choose to use their cars to have races or to act out pretend play scenarios with their cars and garages. This is okay.
Okay, new and unexplored materials. During this, using this in mind, you introduce materials new to the classroom during small group time. This gives children the chance to try out the material and to help decide where they are going to be stored. This also encourages a supportive climate of shared control as the teachers and children make changes in the environment together. Observing which materials children do not use is another source of ideas for small group time. You may want to consider reintroducing these materials at small group time because they may awaken their interest in them. You could also consider combining familiar materials in new ways. So, for example, you may consider adding teddy bear counters to the blocks.
So let's take a look at these two writing areas. Do you see any strengths in either area? Do you see any concerns in either area? Which area allows for children to find, use, and return materials more easily? Why? When areas are cluttered, children tend to avoid them and therefore do not have the opportunity to use the materials and develop skills. We need to remember that the children's areas are not places for us to store our materials or just to allow for them to become areas that are uninviting.
So a little hint. If you aren't seeing any children doing something in a particular content area, you may find that your classroom is lacking materials, or perhaps they're hard to find, the materials that lend themselves to the children's learning in that area. So you want to think about the content focus as you plan your small group times around new and unexplored materials. So when something's not working, materials are not being used, take a look around your environment first. This may clue you into what adjustments need to be made. If you notice, as in the slide before with the writing area, if you notice children are not writing a lot in the classroom, you might want to look at your writing area to see that the materials are sufficient, that the interest area is inviting. If you need to add materials or rethink how to arrange your writing area, it would be helpful to introduce those new materials or changes in the area during small group time. Look around at your learning environment, and accessibility may aid in planning small group activities when you're thinking about including new and unexplored materials. When you add new materials to your classroom, you may also spark an idea or an interest that you can draw upon from when planning activities. For example, if you add a pumpkin to your house area, it could inspire a STEAM study around pumpkins. It's not just for decoration. It's in order to give children new experiences. So here's an example of how to layer in content, children's interests, and underused materials. Miss B has been noticing that children have not been using Play-Doh a lot recently. She also needs to collect more anecdotes for sorting. She decided to think about ways to reintroduce the Play-Doh, but also add some materials for sorting. She knows that Michael and Joey have been using the small dinosaurs a lot too. So Ms. B's small group idea would be using sticks of different sizes, dinosaur counters, and Play-Doh. She will tell a story about a forest filled with trees. Some of the trees are short, some were tall, and she would put the sticks in her Play-Doh as she described the different sized trees. And then she'll add the dinosaurs who came to the forest searching for places to live. Some wanted to live by the short trees and some by the tall trees. She would give the materials to her children and encourage them to share where their dinosaurs might want to live. This idea was formulated by Miss B's observations of her classroom environment, how and what children are using during the daily routine, and her reflections on what core indicators she needs to assess.
Local traditions. Occasionally, small group times can stem from local traditions and community events. You might have some festivals or fairs going on in your town or your city. And these can include local festivals, holidays, or seasonal activities that are part of children's lives, such as decorating pumpkins, like I said, art fairs and festivals, and maybe Thanksgiving. Making connections with your families to learn what holidays they do or do not celebrate as you incorporate holidays into your activities. So please be mindful. Don't celebrate activities or holidays in your classroom that the children are not celebrating with in their families, or um, vice versa. If they do celebrate a holiday at home that maybe you haven't touched upon, maybe you can invite the family in to discuss it with the classroom on their local traditions. More on local traditions. This does not give teachers permission to do craft projects where all children make the same thing. You have to have all 5 ingredients of active learning to be an appropriate small group activity. Small group activities are not about making products, they are about supporting individual children's learning. For an example, if you have 15 turkeys and justify the activity by stating that they are decorated differently, you have just removed active learning. When the adult has predetermined outcome, such as a craft product, giving choice in the paper color does not support individual children's learning. The purpose of the activity is to teach and reinforce skills needed for their development. This includes thinking, talking, exploring, experimenting, and manipulating open ended material. Crafts are not open ended.
But then, how do I incorporate the holidays without crafts? There are ways to do this. Talk to your children about what ideas represent the holiday or the celebration. Take a picture walk through a story about Thanksgiving, Diwali, Halloween, keeping in mind that sometimes especially the nonfiction stories that talk about holidays might be a little long. So that's why we recommend a picture walk, and you can get an awful lot of language out of your children, especially if they experience some of these holidays with their families. Plan your children's experiences based on their responses and their prior knowledge. For example, if children are talking about how they would have decorated their houses for Christmas, which is very likely in a lot of households, they are going to be doing that pretty soon, you can suggest that maybe decorating the classroom would be fun. So then talk to your children, create a list of ideas for how to decorate the classroom. What materials might we need? Let's look around the classroom and see what materials will help us with that. Then plan a small group time or 2 based on those ideas that children had for decorating the classroom. Take your cues from the children. Children with little prior knowledge may need some prompting using books, like described before, and personal holiday decorations. You are part of this classroom community as well. So you might want to bring some ideas that you would use at home as well. Ask families how they celebrate and how they decorate their homes, so that way you can get an idea of how to incorporate what they're seeing at home with what they're seeing at school. And remember to always include the 5 ingredients of active learning when planning your small group time experiences. So let's take a look at how to put them all together, local traditions and content areas. So here's another anecdote from Ms. B's classroom. Each year there are several art fairs and festivals. Ms. B took her children on a walking trip to visit some of the exhibits at the local art festival near her school. She was able to gather pamphlets that show the artists, and she also took several photos of the artwork and the sculptures. She wanted to follow up on the field trip by providing her small group the opportunity to work with clay and to support children's development in the content area of creative representation. So for her small group time, she started small group time by first showing the photos taken from the field trip. And then she told them that they can be artists and they were going to use clay. So then everyone gets a clay board, a hunk of clay, a small bowl of water, and then you might want to have some rolling pins and additional clay as well, clay tools as well, as backup materials. Clay, Play-Doh, they're very, very open-ended, and they are great for creating representations and also for strengthening fine motor skills.
So some things to keep in mind when planning a small group time. It's content areas plus children interests, content area plus new and unexplored materials, content area plus local conditions. When you're planning your small group times, always think about the content that you want your children to experience. Thinking about content will help with scaffolding your children. Always expect that children will use materials in different ways. And remember those 5 ingredients of active learning. So small group time, starting the beginning. In the beginning, introduce the activity with an opening statement. Have materials ready ahead of time. Use an opening statement to introduce the activity or materials to the children and give children their own set of materials and let them begin working immediately. They don't have to wait for everyone else.
Opening statements. Opening statements serve to introduce the activity to the children. They capture children's attention to help them get interested and engaged with the materials. So while teachers do not have a predetermined product in mind, they do have skills in mind that they want to teach and want children to experience. So opening statements not just introduce, but they frame the small group activity. It gives that activity purpose and focus while still allowing for freedom and activity in creativity, in how to use those materials. So when we think about opening statements, we think about 4 opening statements that we might typically use at small group time. One might be describing the materials, and it's simply just that. You're describing the materials in front of you or the materials that you'll be giving out. You might connect the materials to children's previous play or interests, which is really special for the kids because when they know that you've recognized what they're using, they're feeling that, oh, my teacher does care about what I'm doing, and they feel supported. You might start with a short, simple, open-ended story, kind of like the one with the dinosaurs and the trees of different sizes, using the materials. And then the other one might bring focus to a content area. So maybe you're specifically talking about letter writing or patterning or sorting or counting.
Okay, so same small group time, 4 different opening statements. Simply describe the materials. In your baskets, you'll find some special markers and writing and white drawing boards. When you're done drawing, see what happens when you wipe your board with your cloth. Connect the activity to the children's interests. Yesterday during work time, Amaya and Jordan wrote some letters on their message board. Today, I thought it would be fun for us to write on our own message board. Let's see what we can do. Tell a short and simple open-ended story. Once upon a time, there were some letters playing on a board. Soon, more and more of their letter friends joined them. Here are some markers and boards you can use to make your own letter stories. Draw attention to a content focus. We always have drawings on our message board, and sometimes we also have letters. Today, for small group time, you each have your own message board. I'm curious to see what letters you write. With this, you'll want to have backup materials. Some backup materials that might be useful for this activity are letter links, magazine pages with letters, maybe some magnetic letters or letter cards. And how you frame the activity will help keep the children focused. Some children may choose to write letters, and others may still be at the stage where they're just drawing random shapes and lines.
So now that we have opened our small group time, we find ourselves in the middle where children and adults interact with materials and with each other, and adults find opportunities to scaffold children's learning. So the middle has active learning all around. We're watching what individual children do with the materials. We're moving from child to child to interact. We're listening to what children say and to about what they are doing. And we have a set of materials for ourselves, right? So the teachers need their own set of materials so they can imitate or copy or work alongside what you're seeing children doing. This is where adults are scaffolding children's growth. You can individualize conversations and interactions based on their developmental abilities. You can introduce vocabulary. You can describe what they're doing or ask them to describe what they're doing. You're offering the opportunity to share what they're doing with peers and adults. And when you use materials in the same way children do, boy, do they feel proud and connected to you. They really do feel special when you can make your build in the same way that they are building or creating.
The middle, active learning all around. So talk with children about what they are doing. Refer children to each other for ideas and assistance. And bring out backup materials as needed. Scaffold, scaffold, scaffold. Scaffold your children's learning. As you find children losing interest in the materials, or maybe you want to enhance or add to the skills being developed, you may want to add your own backup materials. Scaffolding children's learning during small group time. Take a look at the picture and you notice the scaffolding around the building. That scaffolding is supporting that building. And if you look, you can almost see it goes vertical and horizontal. So when we scaffold, remember, we want to take that horizontal approach. So scaffolding means to both support children's individual levels or development where they currently are. You're going to take them where they are, meet them where they are, and support them from that level. Then you will provide extensions as they move to the next developmental stage. You're not going to push them, you're going to guide them.
We typically identify 4 steps for scaffolding. The first one would be to identify the content area. The next step would be consider their developmental range. So if you have someone in the earlier stages of learning, maybe they're exploring the process of sort of scribbling, right? Or you have someone who is in the middle where they're starting to form some letters, perhaps maybe writing the first letter of their name or their own name. And maybe children who are in the later stages of development, again, following that writing theme, maybe they are writing not just their name, but their names of peers and other words. So you want to support each child a little bit differently when you're scaffolding. And then you provide that support in step 3 at that current level. And then you sort of waver between 3 and 4, offering a gentle extension, seeing if, like Gemma said, that you're not pushing, but you're guiding. And they're going to give cues to let you know if you need to kind of pull back a little bit and go back to the level that they are and provide your support there instead.
So these adult-child interactions is a crucial part of scaffolding children. What we want to do is observe what children do with the materials. You want to also use the materials yourself. And you also want to imitate children's actions. Once a small group time is set in motion, observe how the child is using the materials. Let them lead the discussion. Describe how to approach the child, or decide, excuse me, how to approach the child. It may require a question from you, or it may require you just commenting on what you see the child doing with the materials in front of them. You may want to even just consider parallel play with the child who does not want to talk. Sometimes your physical presence is a comfort for the child.
So in small group time, you want to move from child to child to give individual support. You want to listen to what the children are saying, and you want to engage in conversations. And this is where some ELL or purchase children need support strategies, and the strategies can be used. Just a few minutes of individual attention during small group time can help to reinforce the targeted strategies. It's an opportunity to build language skills. You can add those meaty and juicy words into your conversations, and don't be afraid to use them. They will pick up on them, and they also will start to use them. As the year progresses, you may see children using more language and without prompting, and you're able to assess whether or not the strategies are effective and working.
Another strategy would be to be ready for children to use those materials in unexpected ways. And then you're going to be conversing with those children using a variety of different interaction strategies. When children use materials in unexpected ways, you have an opportunity to engage in conversations that encourage children to describe that thought process. You're building vocabulary by naming what you see and by helping them to form ideas about how they're using materials or what they're creating. In this example here in the photo, the teacher may have chosen tongs and baskets for the individual materials, and the large tray of bottle tops are the shared materials. Children might sort, count, build, create patterns. By having the shared materials, children are also encouraged to ask peers to help them find colors or to hand them a specific top. They might also develop some negotiation skills, as two or more children may want to use the same purple top with the sparkles on it. The problem-solving steps to conflict resolution is a huge part of our curriculum, and you will be learning about that in some of the upcoming teacher support training.
In small group time, you also want to listen to what children say about their ideas and work. You want to converse with children. You also want to be mindful of referring children to each other for problem solving. When you refer one child to another, you're acknowledging each child's efforts as being important and being meaningful. Children learn from each other as much as they learn from the adults in the room. Children may soon take the initiative to refer to their peers when looking for assistance or just to share their ideas. This is what helps to create self-sufficient individuals and a part of the classroom community. When adults listen to and respect what children are saying about their work, children start to feel accountable and accomplished.
Small group time, working with cars and boards, scaffolding example. earlier development. Things children might say or do at this stage. They might drive the car around the floor, yell, "Rrr, zoom," while making a car go back and forth on the floor. They might line the cars up on a board. To support children's current level, you might use your own materials like the child, explore how the vehicles move on the floor, line up your cars on a board, imitate the sounds that the child makes, and label the child's actions. You are rolling the car on the floor. You made it go. To offer extensions, you might pose a challenge. I see your race cars going fast. I wonder what you could do to make it go faster. Draw attention to other children's actions. Yemi is using his boards like a road. He has made a path with them. These are examples of what scaffolding looks like at the earlier, middle, and later stages of development.
So in looking at a child or children who are in the middle stages of development, here are some things that children might do or say. The cars work best on the boards. They don't like the carpet. So maybe they place their board on a block and they create a ramp and then they send their cars rolling down it. They might say to another child, "Hey, let's have a race." So to support the children's current level here, you might imitate their actions, roll your car on the carpet and then on the board and try racing your car with them. You might talk about how fast the cars are going by using words like fast, rapidly, speedy, quick, slower, sluggish, and things like that. And then you're going to layer on some language to describe the child's actions. "You're right, Carly. The carpet is rougher and it's difficult to roll the car on it." And then if you want to offer an extension, you might use ordinal numbers to describe the race. "The red car came in first and the yellow car was second." Or ask the child to explain their thinking. "Why do you think the cars work better on the board? Why do you think your car goes further on the ramp?"
So scaffolding example at later development. Some things children might say or do at this stage. Experiment with making bridges by adding blocks to both sides and put a long plank across it. Make a ramp several blocks tall and say, "When it's high like this, the car goes far, almost to Joey's foot." To support children's current level, you might imitate the child's actions, maybe make a ramp like the child did, or roll your car down the high ramp. Ask the child to describe what they did. "Ella, I would like to make a bridge like yours. Can you tell me how you made it?" To offer extensions, you might pose a new challenge. Say, "I wonder how high the ramp would have to get before the car stops racing and just fell off." Gently introduce a new idea. Ask the child if they want to measure how far their car went or how high their ramp is.
Interaction strategies, we're looking for the social emotional antidotes. During small group times, look for the social emotional core indicators that may occur in natural ways. Occasionally, social emotional activities are used during small group time, but more often, the social emotional experience will occur naturally. When using interaction strategies, you are teaching the skills needed for problem solving with peers, regulating emotions, asking for help, and that may be from both the adults and from their peers, and also focusing and attending to tasks. Some small group times may be centered around social emotional learning, but it's also important to be mindful of the social emotional language and skills that come from other small group activities as well. When teachers are using interaction strategies during small group, they are modeling social emotional language to children as needed. And when teachers naturally show ways, they're modeling ways to take turns, saying please and thank you. They also model negotiation skills. These children will start to show the same positive behaviors with their peers as well.
So now we have come to the end of small group time where we bring the activity to a close and we create a transition where we transition to the next part of the daily routine. So we want to always remember, give them a 3-minute warning before ending the activity. Encourage children to help you clean up the materials. It gives the children, or give children concrete suggestions about where to put the materials or what they can do to help clean up. And remind children where they can find the materials if they want to use them again at work time. Plan for a way to transition children to the next part of the daily routine. We cannot stress that enough. It is so important to be mindful of how you transition out of small group time. If someone is not finished using the materials, they need comfort in knowing that perhaps they can use those materials again later. So you can tell them that they can use it during work time, right? So you can create a designated area in your classroom, and you might want to call it the work in progress area. If your small group time runs right into planning time, which runs right into work time, then it's actually almost immediate where this child knows, I know what I'm going to plan for work time today for my first plan, and it's to use what we were doing at small group time, and that creates a sense of comfort. If the child knows based on the daily routine that work time is a little bit later, but their stuff is in the work in progress area, they're going to know that they will get back to that. And that also helps with self-regulation. So we cannot stress those transitions enough.
Some things you might say at the end of small group time. We'll put the Play-Doh tub right here on the art shelf. If you want to make a plan to use it tomorrow at work time, this is where you can find it. It's almost time to go outside. You can put the magnets in the basket and the paper clips go here. After you put your frogs in the basket, hop to your cubbies and put your coats on. In 3 more minutes, it will be time to put the blocks away.
So what does all this look like in the virtual world? All of the information that we just gave you about planning for your activities, about the adult-child interaction strategies, these are what would be typically happening in a typical classroom environment. For right now, we are in a virtual world. So we want to think about how to translate what we know about small group time and what we know children need to how we do this remotely. So some of the best small group activities just may not translate into the world of remote learning as easily as we would want them to. So some things to be mindful of: use the materials that the children have access to. So the remote learning kits that were provided by the Jersey City Public Schools Early Childhood Department. Markers are in there, crayons are in there, the Wiki sticks are in there, the cubes, the snap cubes are in there. Think about the household materials that children already have at home. They might have maybe access to some plastic cups or socks that can be used as a ball, things like that. So you want to always think about, what is the skill I'm teaching and how can I use what they have or what they may have in their home as a replacement material, right? So again, the example here, whereas a sock can be rolled up as a ball. Active learning can be present and should be present in virtual teaching by using the 5 ingredients of active learning as much as possible. So again, you want to really, really think ahead before you're doing the activities. What are all of the alternative items that I can offer my families ahead of time so that they can come to small group time prepared, and they can come to small group time ready to start the activity with you. In terms of choice, you can still respect the choices children make and how they're using the materials and how they're manipulating the materials that you have provided. So now we have our materials, we have our choice, we have our manipulation. Child language and thought goes without saying. Children are going to be so excited and eager to share what they're doing and what they're creating and how they're using materials with each other, through the screen, with you through the screen. I've seen experiences where children are holding things up real close to the camera because they're so excited to show what they're doing. And in terms of the adult scaffolding, whether remote or in person, how we speak to children and the questions we ask are what makes the difference. The comments we make is what makes the difference. The scaffolding should still be taking place and observations should still be made as we are in our virtual world.
Okay, next steps. Because we had to do this webinar and not conduct this small group workshop in person, we provided you with the webinar. But when we meet for the Q&A session, we will also have the opportunity to discuss small group time and to discuss how it is going for you. So some things to bring to the Q&A session. Questions you may have, some opening statements that you have tried out, and then also be prepared to share challenges and successes that you have had with small group time virtually.
So in an attempt to turn our cameras back on, we do want to say thank you. Oh, there it goes. Okay. We just wanted to say thank you for your time. We do look forward to seeing you at the Q&A session where, like Eileen said, we'll have an opportunity to go over any of this. Ladies, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, those dates and times should be emailed to you guys. So if you haven't received them, I would reach out to
Either
administrator.
the administrator would have that information by now.
Yes.
Yep, so we look forward to meeting with you virtually during the Q&A session. New way of learning and teaching.
Yes, it is. You guys are rock stars. We admire a lot of what's going on. So, keep up the great work and we'll see you really, really soon.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.